During another one of Donald Trump's pressers, one of his little chats with reporters, he had an exchange with a reporter that I think exposes a lot about his thinking, and then also led to him insulting the reporter, who was Kaitlan Collins. We have a bunch to look at. We'll start with that and then get into all things Russia's invasion of Ukraine and the negotiations, the talks between Trump and Putin in this segment. If you appreciate the show, please do click the subscribe button. Let's jump into this reporting and I'll show you that clip that I referred to. This is from the Washington Post. Trump's call with Putin alarms Europe and Ukraine. The announcement of the Trump-Putin call made no mention of Europe or of much of a Ukrainian role, playing into fears that their interest will fall by the wayside. Obviously, Trump finds Putin to be his sort of buddy / mentor, I guess is how I'd word it. President Donald Trump's phone call to Russian President Vladimir Putin on Wednesday has deeply rattled Kyiv and its European partners, triggering long-held fears that Ukraine could be excluded from the peace talks determining its own future and security, as well as that of the rest of the continent. And what's weird is there is this characteristic starting to develop of the Trump-Putin discussions, which is strangely icing out one of the two key players in this conflict, as most people call it, or as it should be properly described, Russia's brutal invasion of Ukraine. Trump, who spoke to Putin on Wednesday and then phoned Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky to inform him of the call, said that he and his Russian counterpart will soon try to meet in Saudi Arabia without the Ukrainian leader. And what Zelensky came out and said publicly after this was that he's not going to be a part of any peace deal if he's not a part of the negotiations for it. Now, if a U.S. president were calling with the Russian dictator, the Russian president, and saying, listen, you're not getting anything. We're going to do blah, 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 blah. Trump always said he would call and say, gotta settle, was the way that he worded it. And that would solve everything. If that's what was happening and Russia was just going to stop invading, pull back, and respect the sovereignty and the territorial integrity, I should say, of Ukraine, then that would be fine. But that's not what's happening. They're talking about concessions. They're talking about a more complicated peace deal. And for Ukraine to not be a part of that seemingly for the time being, and a meeting's being scheduled that wouldn't have a Ukrainian spokesperson, is very strange. Very, very strange. On that note, here is a back and forth that Trump had with Kaitlan Collins, and then we have much more.
Sir, on Ukraine, when Putin says that he really wants peace, do you believe him?
Yeah, I do. I believe he wants peace. I believe that President Putin, when I spoke to him yesterday, I know him very well. Yeah, I think he wants peace. I think he would tell me if he didn't. I'd like to see peace.
Do you trust President Putin?
I believe that, I believe that he would like to see something happen. I trust him on this subject.
Okay, I'm going to circle back to that, but just hold in your mind Trump saying, I think Putin would tell me if he didn't want peace.
I think he'd like to see something happen. I think it could have happened a long time ago. I think Biden, number one, it shouldn't have started, but it did. And now all those cities are knocked down like demolition sites. All those beautiful golden towers are knocked down. There's nothing going to replace them. But much more importantly, you lost millions of people. A lot of soldiers, but you lost millions of people. When they knocked down those cities, and they're all laying down on the side, they're laying down just in ashes and all crumbled up concrete. They literally look like a world-class demolition site. And many of them, almost all of them, but many of them, and this should have been done by Biden years ago. This should have never been allowed to happen. I know he's a friend of yours.
But couldn't Putin just withdraw his...
He's a friend of CNN. That's why nobody watches CNN anymore, because they have no credibility.
So now I'm taking it to a personal level with Kaitlan Collins with that. But let me put this in different terms, okay? Imagine you were friends with Hannibal Lecter. Let's use Hannibal in this analogy just because Trump likes him. You know, the historical figure, Hannibal Lecter. And you, Hannibal, and your friend, okay, go out to dinner. And then Hannibal eats your friend for dinner. Oh, gosh. That's, dang it, you know? It's a bummer. So then you say, Hannibal, stop. Well, you told me you weren't going to eat him. And he goes, but that's sort of my thing, right? Is that one? I've never watched that movie, but he's a cannibal, right? He likes eating people. Trump says that he would eat people for dinner or whatever. So I'm going off of Trump's articulation of that story because I've never watched it. The Silence of the Cows or whatever. And then you go out to dinner with Hannibal again, but before you say, promise me you won't eat me. Hanny, promise me. And he promises you he won't eat you. Then you go to dinner, okay? Wouldn't you find that illogical? Because Hannibal Lecter's thing is eating people, apparently. I think he's like a serial killer who eats people. And so why would you take his word when his thing is violating such agreements to eat you? You know, now we're already getting kind of into the connection to this analogy, which is, it is a profoundly ignorant thing to say. To say, why would Putin tell me he wants peace if he doesn't? That's kind of Putin's thing. It's kind of his thing to violate peace agreements, invade countries, aggression. A big part of our national security apparatus is about preparing for and combating Russian military aggression because they kind of do it a lot. And so just because he told you he's not going to eat you doesn't mean you should believe him, is my point. And then listen to the very beginning of this too.
On Ukraine, when Putin says that he really wants peace, do you believe him?
Yeah, I do. I believe he wants peace. I believe that President.
All right. And then imagine you believe Hannibal Lecter when he says he's not going to eat you as he's gnawing on your arm. That's how crazy we are. Because if Putin wanted peace, he could get it right now. Right this second, he could stop invading. Stop nibbling on my arm. It's the exact same. No, he doesn't want. He's not stuck in a situation. He's not forced against his will to keep the invasion going. This isn't a two-sided war in the sense that if Russia stopped invading, Ukraine would invade. It's just him trying to take over territory that's not his. And so should there be talks? Sure. If there's a fair peace agreement that comes of it, good. We want this to stop. But two things are important. Trump being naive and played because he thinks if Putin goes, I didn't interfere in the election, which Putin said, and Trump said, I don't know why he would tell me that if he didn't mean it. And him saying, I want peace, even though I'm the one making the peace not happen. That, number one, you should not be so ignorant. And number two, you can't allow for a peace deal that sets up further aggression. Because again, Putin's thing is he goes, yeah, sure, we'll do peace. And then violates it. Moving forward, here's this.
We see one giant summit with you, Xi Jinping, and Vladimir Putin.
Yeah, I could see that. Let things calm down a little bit. You know, when I left, we had no Middle East problem. We had no Russia going into Ukraine. They never would have done it. Putin never would have done it. And I came back and we got like the whole world is blowing up. So when we straighten it all out, then I want to have one of the first meetings I want to have is with President Xi of China, President Putin of Russia. And I want to say, let's cut our military budget in half. And we can do that.
Whoa. What? What? I haven't heard that from Trump ever. You want to cut the military budget in half? And you think China and Russia will do that? I know a lot of people on the left will go, yes. I'm thinking of one person who might go, I told you we can work with MAGA. Yes. Oh, yes. I wouldn't try. I'm going to be honest. But cuts to the Pentagon. I would not be that trustworthy of Doge picking and choosing what we cut out of the military budget. Let me just put it that way. And I wouldn't trust China and Russia to, in accordance with us, all of us cut our military budget in half. But who knows? Christopher Miller posted Hegseth in a clip that I'll show you in a second, wrongly stated today that over 4 years during Trump's first term, there was no Russian aggression. This is false. Russia did invade in 2014, but the war in eastern Ukraine's Donbass didn't end. It continued until Russia's 2022 invasion. It was at a simmer with frequent deadly flare-ups, but it was still a war on European soil, no less. And people were killed in fighting during Trump's term. I won't list all of the many Russian attacks, but it gave one example there. The point not being to say that the full-scale war didn't start under Biden. It did. But that people miss history or choose partisanship over sort of a more thoughtful lens when they ignore the longer thread here. There's kind of a multi-decade initiative playing out on Putin's end. And so when Trump brags about how the full-scale invasion didn't happen until Biden, that's missing that the build-up to it and the seeds being planted and the military conflict that was beginning is a longer story than just 2022. Here's Hegseth.
You have focused on what Ukraine is giving up. What concessions will Putin be asked to make?
I would start by saying the arguments that have been made.
By the way, I'm sorry, we're going to get back to the seriousness of this, but can we just really quickly, 1 second.
You have focused on what Ukraine is
just really listen for a second.
Giving up. What concessions will Putin be asked to make?
Now, see, really quickly, why can no one in the MAGA world just drink water normally? We don't need in our microphones, okay? Or the Trump can't get the water up thing. Just spill it into your mouth and then
I would start by saying the arguments that have been made that somehow coming to the table right now is making concessions to Vladimir Putin outright that we otherwise, or that the president of the United States shouldn't otherwise make. I just reject that at its face. There's a reason why negotiations are happening right now, just a few weeks after President Trump was sworn in as President of the United States. Vladimir Putin responds to strength. In 2014, he invaded Crimea, not during the presidency of Donald Trump. Over 4 years, there was no Russian aggression from 2016 to 2020. In 2022, Vladimir Putin took aggression on Ukraine.
Right, so that's just not a factual statement. That last part is, but not there was no Russian aggression, which again, it's a part of a broader story. You're not going to be able to solve the problem if you don't understand it. It's a part of why I am so enthusiastically for the support for Ukraine is seeing the broader picture that's being depicted here. And if we always take the path of least resistance and always give Putin this much, then we're going to blink our eyes and we will have launched ourselves into a much more catastrophic scenario. Then continue on the same topic. Here is Trump at the press conference with Modi.
When you look at Ukraine and when you look at the mess that they're in, it's got to be ended and it's got to be stopped. Now, Russia's taken over a pretty big chunk of territory, and they also have said from day one, long before President Putin, they've said they cannot have Ukraine be in NATO. They said that very strongly. I actually think that that was the thing that caused the start of the war, and Biden said it, and Zelensky said it, and I think that was one of the reasons, one of the starts of the war. But from long before Putin, they said you cannot have Ukraine going in any way into NATO. And I start from that standpoint. I think everybody knew that. Now, if a better deal can be negotiated, if they are able to make a deal where they can do that, that's fine with me. I really don't care. I want.
You see, Is this good? I thought he was the master negotiator. But you don't say, yeah, I'll totally concede on a big thing before you even start the negotiation. What are you doing? So I'm just assuming that we're going to say Ukraine can never be in NATO. I don't know. I'm just assuming. But I mean, if Putin doesn't want us to do that, we could get something better. But it's like I used to say, I used to be terrible at negotiating because I would just want to tell the person up front, like I hire someone. Listen, let me be honest with you. Before you lowball or highball, here's the highest I think I could justify paying you. Wait, why did I say that? Of course they're going to pick that. That's what he's doing. And then remember that just because Putin says it doesn't mean there shouldn't be a profound and repetitive effort to demonstrate how disingenuous that is. Putin does not get to dictate which military alliances other countries are in. That's just not a power that he has. It's not a justification to invade and try to take over another country that you don't like that they're going to be in a defensive alliance. Now, you say, but it threatens Russia because Ukraine's on Russia's border. So if they were in NATO, you could have NATO troops on Russia's border. There's already NATO members on Russia's border. So that's not accurate either. But it would be closer to, it is not in the world under the framework that the United States is supposed to stand for. It is not acceptable for countries to invade and take over other countries because they don't like which alliances that country's in, or they feel threatened by it, when there's zero justification to believe NATO's going to invade Russia. Here is one little more silly moment where Trump can't understand a reporter.
Raising anti-India voice, calling about separation, terrorism activities in India. Do you think that should continue here in the US as well?
You're going to have to go louder.
Mr. President, people in India would be welcoming your decision to extradite Tahabur Rana to...
I can't understand a word he's saying.
May I, sir? May I?
Okay, so that's how the press conference started. Didn't go particularly well. One bit of good news, Mediaite, saying that Hamas has agreed to resume the freeing of hostages 2 days after Trump's ultimatum. Hamas announced it will proceed with the deal that was previously mediated. The group had briefly delayed the latest exchange, accusing Israel of violating the truce, but now says it remains committed to carrying out the deal as agreed. And this is, we want, as I said previously, for this deal to stand and for all the hostages to be returned. Mediators from Egypt and Qatar reportedly assured Hamas they would work to remove obstacles and fill gaps in the agreement. And Trump had said that same ultimatum, but what seems to be contributing to the complications is that separate from the deal, and I've said before, whatever role Trump played in it, credit, or his mediator, good, to try to bring peace. But him out there shouting about taking over Gaza has to be complicating the scenario, and is one of the more insane things you could do in such a delicate moment too. I had some more clips, but I don't think we have the time. So let me leave it there, and on the bonus show, I'll be covering what I missed there. You can get the bonus show by clicking the join button below.